And joining us right now is Benjamin Freed. He's a staff writer at the Washingtonian, and thank you for joining us, Mr. Freed.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
I think we were a little surprised to learn that U.S. Attorney Ronald Machen Jr. would be stepping down as of April 1st. There was no indication that the U.S. Attorney was done with his duties here in the District of Columbia, and especially considering the Vincent Gray investigation is still pending. What's happening? There was this huge flurry of activity with this investigation to the mayor right before the primary last year, which many believe really was the final nail in the coffin for Gray's attempt to get re-election, and then nothing. What's happening?
Well, that's what you said is exactly what happened. Machen shortly before last year's primary, finally indicted and secured a guilty plea from Jeff Thompson, the businessman at the center of the shadow campaign, and that really did did Gray in. And since then, there's been there have been a couple other minor developments in that larger thread, but there's still nothing. Nothing has happened with Gray himself.
Yeah, Jeffrey Thompson, of course, that was Uncle Earl, right, if I remember right. That Vincent Gray was supposed to call him.
That's the name he liked to be called. Yeah.
And no developments at all. I mean, if I'm Vincent Gray right now, and listen, I'm no fan of the former mayor. We were pretty hard on him as the shadow campaign story developed, and right, Uncle Earl raised his head there. But if I'm him and I'm sitting here a year after the primary and I've just lost, and now Machen's calling it quits and saying, oh yeah, my job here is done, I'd want some vindication.
Right, and I mean, you see, and this is in my story and it's in other folks' stories. The former mayor, he's been letting his representatives, especially his former campaign manager Chuck Vees, do most of the talking for him, and I think there is a lot of anger there that and a feeling that by getting the guilty plea out of Thompson 2 weeks before the primary, that really was, as you said, the nail in the coffin.
Well, let me ask you, is the investigation closing? I mean, just because Machen leaves doesn't mean that the investigation has to come to a close.
No, it doesn't. The investigation, for all we know, is still ongoing. The public corruption work that Machen's office did, most of it was led by his deputy, Vinnie Cohen Jr., who is going to be the acting U.S. attorney after Machen steps down.
Right.
So officially the investigation is still open. So if you're the mayor, it's not over. We don't know when it's if it's over yet, but nothing has been announced.
Well, it wasn't without some victory there. I mean, Harry Thomas. He got Harry Thomas. He got Michael Brown, Kwame Brown.
Yep.
Then all the stuff with Uncle Earl. I mean, there were convictions here, so it was worthwhile to go after some of this stuff. It's just that many people, I think, are surprised and are wondering, well, what the heck? All of this talk about the shadow campaign. A lot of people around the shadow campaign went down, but Vincent Gray skates away clean.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, there were a lot of victories that Machen achieved, like the 3 council members who pleaded guilty, like Thompson himself. Although Thompson's sentence, when he's sentenced, will likely be very short. That's based on the terms of his plea. Machen's office is also handles a lot of national security and counterterrorism cases, and just the way the district's judiciary system is set up, the U.S. Attorney is also responsible for prosecuting felonies committed in the District of Columbia, and Machen's office was very active and successful in many of those areas.
So as we look back now on U.S. Attorney Ron Machen, and he's got, I guess, 2 more weeks on the job, all in all, how would you assess his job here in the District of Columbia?
I think he's going to be remembered as somebody who was very tough on public corruption, very aggressive on counterterrorism, national security cases, and very diligent when it comes to being the prosecutor for the district's internal judiciary system. But people are going to remember him for leading this years-long investigation into Vince Gray,
right,
and never closing the book on it.
Do you
one way or the other?
Do you suspect that before he heads out the door and signs off whatever he has to sign off there as the U.S. Attorney, that he'll actually deliver an assessment, a statement, and sort of a status report to fill in the blanks here about where this investigation is?
I wouldn't bet on that happening. He's been very careful, and he's been very careful in any public statements about open investigations, and I would assume that that's going to be something he keeps up until his last day on the job.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being with us.
Sure,
Again, that's
do it.
Benjamin Freed at the Washingtonian.